Austin Beck-Doss here from the WYO Today newsroom. This morning, I'm privileged to be welcoming Eric Murphy into our studio. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Eric Murphy, a longtime employee of the Riverton Police Department, including a stint as the Chief of Police. Eric, you recently announced, I don't know, formally or informally, I'm not sure what you're calling it at this stage, but you are running for the county sheriff.
I am. So a couple weeks ago, I posted on Facebook that it was more of an informal, just to kind of get everybody's thoughts. I've had an overwhelming sense of people wanting me to run, so I have officially decided, with the permission of my wife, to run for Fremont County Sheriff in 2026.
All right, great. And so I'm curious when you say that there was encouragement from folks in the community, and what did that look like in the years since you've moved on to other things, at least temporarily, from law enforcement? Has it looked like people in the community coming up to you and going, hey, we appreciated your leadership during those years. We'd love to see that come back again?
Yes. So I've been retired for 2.5 years. I work for the Shoshone School District. I'm a paraprofessional there, and I absolutely love it, and I coach high school football, and I love it. But I will tell you that my heart is in law enforcement, and I miss it. I have 2 sons that are in law enforcement. Taylor works for the Riverton Police Department. My son Caden works for the Wyoming Honor Farm. And so I got my wife's permission to go ahead and run for sheriff. So I have decided to go ahead and jump in with both feet and run for sheriff of Fremont County.
Very cool. And I didn't realize that both of your sons are working in law enforcement locally. That must be
Yes.
a neat sort of full circle thing for you.
It is. And I also have another son, Christopher, who works in the oil field in Casper. And so we're very much a law enforcement family. And so it just feels right for me to go ahead and run for sheriff and try to do what's right for the people of Fremont County.
Great, Eric. Well, let's go back a little bit and do a quick sort of recap of your life and career up until this point. I know because you've been around a long time in law enforcement locally, people generally know you and who you are. But for those that don't, how did you initially kind of develop an interest in this kind of career and end up at RPD?
Okay, so I can tell you that I was 8 years old when I decided to be a police officer. So I moved to Dallas, Texas after being in the military. I was in the Air Force for 4 years. Traveled all over the world, got on as a police officer in Dallas. I worked there for 3 years, and then I brought my mom up here one time for Christmas and did a ride-along with who is now my best friend, Scott Comers. He was on the Riverton Police Department. That night, we got into a car chase, had a stabbing, and I was like, holy cow, you guys are actually like real cops here in Wyoming. And he's like, yeah, we're a busy police department. So I put my application in and ended up getting it and have been here since 2000.
Yeah, and I know that you worked for RPD for, I believe, 26 years total, and some of those years were chief of police, which represents, that you kind of moved up the leadership chain there and served in a variety of roles. Tell us kind of how you went from one role to the next over that long 2+ decades.
Yeah, okay, so just so you know, I was here in 2000. I decided to marry my wife, and I did not make probation my first year with the Riverton Police Department. So they let me go. So I went and worked in Shoshone for the Shoshone Police Department for 2.5 years. They got a new chief in Riverton. He pulled me in one day and he said, hey, I heard kind of what happened. Would you be willing to come back to the Riverton Police Department? I'm like, absolutely. So I put my application back in the Riverton Police Department. I ended up getting it. And that was in 2003. And from 2004 until 2017 is when I made chief. I worked my way up through the ranks of the Riverton Police Department and ended up becoming the chief of police and served as the chief for 6 years.
Yeah, and so tell us more about that experience serving as chief for 6 years. That role is quite focused on the Riverton community, and as county sheriff, you've got this broader scope, but also kind of Riverton that it certainly feels kind of like the heart in many ways of Fremont County. So I imagine as chief of police in Riverton, you are engaging with the county, thinking about the county beyond the city limits of Riverton. So what was that like kind of over those 6 years to, like, what'd you learn about Riverton and what'd you learn about the county broadly?
So I can tell you that the city of Riverton is by far the busiest police department, maybe not in the state, but certainly one of the busiest police departments in the state. We were literally more than, I don't even know what to say about that. We were busy every single day. Mm-hmm. So I met with the chief of Shoshone. I dealt with the chief of Lander a lot so we had a SRT team, a SWAT team at the time. So they would call us and we would go work, an incident in those communities quite a bit. So I had a lot of dealings with those chiefs of police. When I became the chief, I continued that relationship with those guys. I met with the sheriff he would come to my office probably once a month, and we would talk about certain issues that we were having. So I had a really, really good working relationship with all of those entities, all the local law enforcement agencies in Fremont County. I feel like the Fremont County Sheriff, it's a totally different ball game. And so I had to think about it for quite a while before I decided to go ahead and run, because as the chief of police, I was hired by the city administrator. You're hired by one person, and even though you're working for the city of Riverton, for the people that live in Riverton, you're literally hired by one person. As the county sheriff, I would be hired by literally the voters of Fremont County. And so that's one thing I've had to really think about is I would have a whole county of bosses, basically. And that's kind of how I feel about it.
Right.
Because when you're an elected official, you are working for the everyday person of Fremont County. And so that's one thing that I've kind of had to wrap my brain around and kind of come to terms with. And I actually think that I would do pretty well with that because I've always been a people person. I feel like, so here's one thing that I would like to do if I make Fremont County Sheriff. I want to do a citizens advisory board, and it would be members from Riverton, from Lander, from the Arapaho tribe, from the Shoshone tribe, from Shoshone, from Du Bois, and get citizens on this board that we could have a conversation, and they could come to me and say, hey, Sheriff, we want to get this done, or we're having this issue. Could we focus on these things?
Right.
And I really think that would be a huge step in the right direction for running for sheriff and getting that buy-in from the whole county.
Yeah, then I think that's a nice idea, certainly in the sense of like connection between some communities in this county that engage with each other and overlap, but can feel isolated in their limited resources. And sometimes it feels like, maybe the county could generally, find ways to share resources that exist and communities in this county that are strong in one area
right.
or weak in another area could kind of pair up with other communities and groups who maybe have opposite assets and team up in a way where you're then kind of hitting on all cylinders. I think the county has a lot of potential on that level. I do too.
Yeah. So here's one thing that's very specific to that idea. So the Riverton Police Department just got brand new body cameras. The Sheriff's Department does not use body cameras. And so I know that the grant at the Riverton Police Department was quite a bit of money. So that would be one of the first things that I'm going to try to do if I make sheriff is to get with the Riverton Police Department and see if there's some way that we could kind of combine our funding and see if we could get some body cameras for the deputies through the way that they did it, and maybe even piggyback on how the Riverton Police Department did that. So that way the Sheriff's Department isn't trying to trying to reinvent the wheel. Like, we could just piggyback off the Riverton Police Department and get body cameras that way.
Right. And I think for myself and likely other members of our community here in Fremont County, there is some confusion around just how much different law enforcement bodies are able to collaborate and exactly how that collaboration works. And I think maybe you could help clear that up a little bit for us through your years of experience, like something like, equipment like you're talking about now. If one agency has some equipment that another agency needs, say, is it as simple as just kind of sharing the gear, or like what does that kind of thing entail in a county like Fremont County? How do those agencies work together?
So I can tell you, okay, so on a much larger deal, we have what's called an MOU, a mutual aid of understanding. And those are all signed by the chiefs of the county and the sheriff. And those contracts say, hey, if you need our assistance, we are allowed to assist you. So if the Riverton Police Department has a shooting, we can call the sheriff's department and then they can come help. Or if Lander PD has a high incident type of situation, the Riverton Police Department's allowed to go over to Lander and help them. That has never, in my understanding, ever had anything to do with equipment. So this is going to be kind of a brand new thing, I'm going to tell you. So I don't know exactly how that would work.
Sure.
So it's always been a manpower issue, but I think that we could also not share equipment, but piggyback off each other and get equipment. So if the Riverton Police Department has already, been granted money for this, could we then come in and say, hey, could we piggyback off of that and get some body cameras from you to help our deputies out, and we would work off the same network? Okay, so Spillman is the computer system that we all use.
Okay.
Everybody in Fremont County uses Spillman system for all of our reports, all of our traffic act, everything that we do is on the Spillman system. So it'd be kind of the same thing, I think, that we could just use it would be ours, but it would be piggybacked off their body camera system and use their system so that we wouldn't have to go and buy our own $1 million system for it, right?
Sure.
And so I don't know that. This is just kind of my idea. And so that is one thing that I'm going to look into to see if we could do that.
Sure. Yeah, that's cool. And in an area where resources and funding is sort of a perpetual challenge, it does feel like the key to that at times can be collaboration.
Right.
But coming back to you, Eric, a little bit, and your, I guess, philosophy on what it would ideally look like for a sheriff to guide the county into a better, safer era. You thinking about having thousands of bosses, all of the voters
Right.
being one of your bosses.
Right.
Tell us a little more about some specific things that you think those thousands of bosses need help with right now. Like, what are some of the county's key issues, and how would you go about addressing those?
So fentanyl is a huge thing in our county right now. It has been a major issue for the last couple years. So that is going to be one of the first things that I really want to tackle, is the fentanyl problem in Fremont County. And again, that's just not a sheriff's department problem. That's a Lander problem. That's a Riverton problem. That's a BIA problem. And so that would be one of the very first things that I would want to meet with the other administrations on, is how do we tackle our fentanyl problem and get some kind of control on that issue, because that is such a huge issue for Fremont County. So that is going to be one of the number one things that I'm going to tackle if I make sheriff. The other thing is just communication. It seems like I hear every single day that, people are just very unhappy with the sheriff's department's response to calls, and how they handle different situations. So here's my idea on that. I will have an undersheriff which would be my second in command. So I plan on spending 1 week, a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in Lander, and my undersheriff would spend Tuesdays and Thursdays in Riverton, and the next week we would flip-flop. I would go down and talk to every single member of the sheriff's department once a week, and kind of get their ideas. I want to make sure that they know what my expectations are, but here's a huge thing that I'm a huge proponent of. It's not a one-way street. As the chief, I would meet with the Riverton police officers and tell them, hey, listen, if you have an idea or if you have an issue, come talk to me about it. Let's get it figured out. I would like, in this is kind of a pie-in-the-sky idea, but I think it can happen. I want every member of the sheriff's department to feel like they have a say in what happens and to feel like a part of the team, right? I'm a huge family guy. That's one thing that I used to tout to the Riverton Police Department is we're a family. And I feel like the sheriff's department would be the same way. So I would meet with every single member of the sheriff's department at least once a week, and get their ideas and just make sure that we're all on the same page. And it's not my page, it would be our page. It would be the sheriff's department's page. It would be the employee page. It would be the citizens of Fremont County page. Like, I just want to make sure that we're all going for the same goal. That's really a big thing for me.
Nice. And I did want to circle back to fentanyl just one more time, because I agree with you that it's certainly a challenge that the county is facing at a pretty prominent, persistent level. And I'm curious, like, what are, in your mind, some specific things that can be done to address that issue? Like, is it a matter of kind of more enforcement in key areas, or, new kind of, I guess, cracking down in specific ways and being a little harder on certain elements of how that issue kind of pervades our community in ways that we're not doing currently? Like, do you have some kind of maybe steps or specific plans in place that might help us do better there?
I do. And so just so you know, I am not an aggressive, I am an aggressive kind of person, but so here is one thing that I've thought about. I would like to get a Dodge Charger or some kind of drug interdiction vehicle, attach a deputy to be a drug interdiction deputy, and let them go out and make traffic stops and enforce laws and start getting some of this fentanyl off the street. Like, to me, that would be their number one goal, is when they come on duty, they're doing traffic stops, not to write tickets, but to get fentanyl off the street. And if we could get like a county-wide, like if we could get a person at the sheriff's department, if the Lander PD could get somebody to do that, if the Riverton Police Department would be able to do that, so I do know that the Riverton Police Department has a traffic unit now. If we could all just really concentrate on traffic stops and trying to get fentanyl off the street, because fentanyl is not produced in Fremont County.
Right.
That's just not the way it works. It is being brought here in cars or trucks or however it's getting here. And so if we could get some of those drug interdiction stops and make a dent in that fentanyl, I think that would be huge. So that would be one of my number one things that I'm going to try to do, is get a really fast car, basically, and get a deputy assigned to that and have that be their focus, is getting fentanyl off the street. And so the other thing is, I'm trying to think how to say this very politically correctly.
Sure.
Being in law enforcement in 23 years in Fremont County, I do know that the sheriff's department has a very laid-back attitude. Like, the Riverton Police Department answers 20 to 30 calls for service in a day. They're a very busy police department. The sheriff's department, when we would have officers go from the police department to the sheriff's department, they would come to the police department and go, yeah, I only had 2 calls for service this week.
Oh, wow.
And so the call load is just different. So if I could get those deputies out on the street enforcing traffic laws, and again, I'm not saying that speeding and these other traffic infractions aren't important, because they are. But if they could be focused on getting the drugs off the street, that would be huge. And I do know for a fact that the sheriff's department has the time to be able to do that. And so that will be one of my main focuses, is getting the sheriff's deputies out on the street doing traffic stops for drug interdiction.
And why such a big difference in the call volume? Is it something about what happens when people in the county call 911, say, and how those calls are routed to departments?
So here's what I think it is. Riverton is a very concentrated, city of 12 to 15,000 people. And we figured probably during the day it rises to about 30,000 people. The county has mainly farmers and ranchers. There are people that go to work on their place every morning, raising cattle, raising crops. And so the population and the crime is just different in the county than it is in the city. The city is just a more concentrated place of the population.
Sure.
And so it just has more crime. And I'm not saying the county doesn't have crime, because it does. It's just different.
Yeah.
And then Lander, Lander's Lander. I mean, I don't know if you've spent any time in Lander.
That's where I live.
So it's just, how Lander is. It's just a different community. It's a very, not quiet community, but it's just a different type of citizen that live in Lander.
Yeah.
So it's just the main focus of criminal activity is in Lander. We have Walmart here. We've got, all the restaurants and stores. And so it just is what it is. I can tell you that Walmart, it unfortunately is, there's shoplifting there literally almost every day. And so it just attracts that criminal element.
Right.
And Lander doesn't have a Walmart. So it's
Right.
just a different demographic.
Like if you had a heat map of crime in Fremont County, Walmart would be a
It would be
dense
huge.
color.
It would be huge.
I see.
Yes, it would be huge.
Okay, so speaking of kind of relationship and interactions between county and Riverton, I wanted to ask you about the Gardens North subdivision, kind of right there on the fringe, technically outside of Riverton,
Right.
But an issue that has been coming up a lot across the county lately. I've been attending county commissioners meetings for the last several months, and I've noticed the county commissioners have been speaking about recent increase in call volumes from Gardens North and trying to engage various county departments into a committee to try to improve that situation. So I imagine over the coming months and years for the county sheriff, that's going to continue to be a focus. So how are you thinking about it?
So here's my idea. And again, I'm not saying it's right, but this is my idea. Right now, they have decided to put up no trespass signs in Gardens North, which is a good idea. I would, if I were the sheriff today, I would post a sheriff's deputy in Gardens North for the remainder of the next couple months. And I'm not saying one deputy would have to be there all 8 hours or 10 hours of their shift. We would rotate, a deputy out every hour just so that they don't get bored. But I would provide Gardens North with a marked unit with a patrol deputy in that area so that if they had issues, they could go to that deputy and get something done. And just so you know, one thing that we've learned, if you have an officer presence in an area, like that reduces crime quite a bit almost immediately, because criminals don't want to deal with law enforcement officers, right? They're going to go to where they don't think law enforcement officers are because they don't want to get arrested. So I feel like if you put a sheriff's deputy there for, a month, 2 months, 3 months, and have somebody dedicated to that area to focus on that criminal activity, that criminal activity would drop immensely. And then, then it would be a matter of just prevention after that. If it worked in 3 months, that's great. And then if they would just kind of go through there on an extra patrol once in a while, just kind of let everybody see that they're there, that would be great. But that would be my instant fix for that area would be to post a sheriff's deputy in Gardens North for the next couple months.
Yeah, and to me it seems like the discussions around Gardens North have been sort of slowed or hindered by these questions around like, well, whose responsibility is it really? Like, is it a public health issue? Is it a crime issue? And it seems like it's a combination of factors. And so it sounds like your idea is to install a presence there. Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, are you also thinking about kind of, working with other county departments, say to, infrastructure has also been a factor. And how do you kind of, in addition to the pure presence and enforcement piece, like how do you also on the people side maybe, or on the broad county leadership level, work on other aspects of it?
Yeah, so I can tell you at the Riverton Police Department, when I was the chief, we would meet once a week, every Monday, and we would meet with, all of the other department heads of the city, and talk about that kind of thing. Okay, so here's the law enforcement issue, here's the public works issue, here's the HR issue, here's all of those. So we would have 8 or 9 people in one room, and they would all be department heads for the city. So I would think that we would do the same thing with the county, and meet with the people that have something to do with what needs to be done in there. So if I was the sheriff, if they wanted me to meet with the public works person once a week, I would be more than happy to do that and figure out, okay, so here's your piece of what's going on, here's my piece, here's your piece, and let's get this all figured out together. So yeah, I think that would be a great idea.
Nice. And so as someone who has been in the county in the law enforcement world again for over 25 years, long career in varied roles, you've worked with, I imagine, quite a few county sheriffs. And so I guess I wanted to ask you, are there certain things that you've learned from engaging with or from watching other county sheriffs that you would kind of think of as a model or use, kind of implement in your own leadership style, or maybe differences, things that you've seen not work so well that you might want to take as a lesson to steer clear from and to avoid repeating going forward?
So here's one thing that I will say. I don't know that I really want to touch that specifically, because I feel like I would be unlike any other Fremont County sheriff that has ran. And I get along with Skip Horniker. He's one of my best friends. I love him to death. I love Ryan Lee. Like, I think that they have done what they can do as the county sheriff. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that I'm a completely different person. My leadership style is completely different. My mentality is completely different. I am very, very much a kind of a hard-nosed, tactical, let's go get them kind of a person. And so I'm really not trying to downplay what they've done, because I think they've done a pretty good job as county sheriffs. I feel like I would be a completely different kind of county sheriff. Like I said, I will be at the sheriff's department in Lander 3 days a week one week and 2 days a week the next week. My undersheriff would be exact opposite of that. So if anybody needed to get a hold of us, or if anybody had any issues, all you would have to do is come to the sheriff's department. And so here's the other thing. I'm not going to just sit in my office when I'm in Lander. I'm going to go to Du Bois and make sure that they're okay. I'm going to go to Crowheart and make sure they're okay and go talk to some of the farmers and ranchers. When I'm in Riverton, I'm going to go to Shoshone and talk to them and make sure that they have what they need. I'm going to go to Riverton and talk to them and find out, that they have what they need. So I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to be sitting in my office 10 hours out of the day, just sitting there waiting for people to come in, just because that's just not me.
Right.
But what I will tell you is that on those days, I will be available, and my undersheriff will be available if somebody needs something from us. And that is one. So I haven't picked an undersheriff yet. I would say that when I do, they're going to have the same visions that I do of Fremont County, and they're going to be a more of an aggressive kind of undersheriff and put themselves out there and not just sit in the office and not do anything. Like, I feel like we would be out on the street answering questions, talking to people, going to Kiwanis, going to different meetings and talking to people and telling them, this is our idea, this is what we're about, and having conversations with people in the county.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm curious because, as law enforcement folks advance in their careers, it does feel like there's often, not always, but this trajectory from like being very much present in the community, being on the street. And then once you develop experience, the natural move is to then take on a leadership role, which often includes less of that kind of direct interaction,
Right.
Which makes sense in some ways. And it's also a little strange in some ways that you accumulate all this experience and then kind of go do something different.
Right.
So I guess my question for you on that is, how would you kind of utilize all of those years that you did spend, being with the community and out on the street? How does that weave itself into your leadership style? And you've just given me some of that there, but just kind of how do you keep that awareness alive when you're a little bit less directly involved?
So I'm going to tell you that for me, that is just how God made me. You know what I mean? Like so I'm retired. I get a retirement check from the state every month. Mm-hmm. I don't have to run for sheriff. And so for me, this is such not a personal thing because I want to do it for the county. But like we said earlier, I have so many people from the county and from the city of Riverton that contact me literally every day going, would you please come back into law enforcement? We need you. I am more than happy to do that and to bring what I have to offer to the table. And like I said earlier, I'm a pretty aggressive guy. Like, I'm not one of these guys that can just sit in an office and just kind of float along. You know what I mean? If I see a problem, I'm going to tackle it. The Fremont County has several issues that need tackled. I feel like I am very capable of doing that. We will just have to wait and see if the people of Fremont County feel the same way and to see if I get elected. I would hope that I have a pretty good chance at it, but I'm not going to sit here and be arrogant enough and think, well, I've got this. You know what I mean? That's just not how I am. So that is why I'm here talking to you, to tell you these are my ideas. These are things that I would like to put in place. If the people of Fremont County want to see those happen, then I'm your guy. If they want to see something else, then I'm clearly not that person, and that's okay. You know what I mean? So if somebody runs against me and the people of Fremont County think, hey, this other person we think that would do a much better job, that's great. I think that's fantastic because I want to do what's best for Fremont County. I feel like I'm what's best for Fremont County, but if Fremont County as a whole feels like somebody else would do a better job, then that's great. You know what I mean? So again, we are elected officials, and so if I'm elected, that means the people of Fremont County want me in that position to be able to do what I need to do to make that happen.
Well, I think that's a good place to start wrapping up here, Eric. Are there other things that we haven't touched on or key issues that you do want people to know, that you're aware of or interested in, as far as your bid for sheriff and getting the word out?
We talked about the Citizen Advisory Board, right? I think that is really it. So here's one thing that I will tell everybody. I absolutely love, so I'm a football coach in Shoshone at the high school. I love coaching those kids. I love having that connection with those kids in Shoshone. And so that is one thing that I do plan on continue doing, even if I do make sheriff, is I still want to be an assistant football coach for Shoshone and being a part of those kids' lives. Like, that's a huge thing for me. So that is one big thing that I want everybody to know, is that if I do get elected at 3:45 during football season, I will still be on the sidelines coaching the Shoshone High School football team. So I'm a 3rd and 4th grade paraprofessional there, and I love those kids. Like, it has been such an amazing time for me to be able to do that for the last couple years. It's just, I just feel like I said earlier, I feel like God put me on this earth to be a police officer. And so I have to, for myself, I have to run for sheriff and just see what happens.
And once again, Eric Murphy running for county sheriff. Thanks so much for spending some time with us this morning, Eric.
Yes, thank you for having me.